From the New Testament, from Matthew 28, verses 1 through 10 and 16 through 20. Now, after the Sabbath, toward the dawn of the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went to see the sepulchre. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone and sat upon it. His appearance was like lightning, and his raiment was white as snow. And for the fear of him, the guards trembled and became like dead men. But the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. He is not here, for he is risen, as he has said. Come and see the place where he lay. Then go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead. And behold, he is going before you to Galilee, and there you will see him. Lo, I have told you." And so they departed quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to tell the disciples. And behold, Jesus met them and said, "Hail!" And they came up and took hold of his feet and worshipped him. Then Jesus said to them, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brethren to go to Galilee, where they will see me." Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw, they worshipped him. But some doubted. And Jesus came and said to them, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given unto me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always to the close of the age." Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Simple acts of kindness, it's been said over the years. You know, it's hard to believe that our lives can be changed in just a moment by just a simple act. A simple act that God places in our lives through others, maybe even ourselves to other people. An act that no one else believes in. Sometimes we might not even believe it ourselves. Simple things that happen that change lives, change communities. Royce Browder was our executive presbyter many years and a good friend of mine, and many of you have known Royce. He gave me a book from a young man in Malawi named William Kawamba. Right now, he's in his 30s, and he's had studied in the United States, and I imagine by this time he's through studying. And he grew up in one of the poorest places in his country, and they say that Malawi is the 5th poorest country in the world. And to understand his situation in life, you have to understand that he was the son of farmers. And in Malawi, they plant a lot of corn, especially sweet corn. Okay, and then they have little places that they take the field corn, they grind it up, and they have they make it sort of like grits, but it's a lot stiffer, and it's almost like Play-Doh, and it's kind of the subsistence food they have. Anyway, in the year 2000, something happened that changed his life forever. And, you know, no one would have any idea at all that this would impact his village, his people, and his world. He was in grade school. They have a different way of talking about years of schooling. It's the English system, and they call it Form 1, Form 2, that sort of thing. Anyway, he wanted to go on to school, and to go on to school, like to go to high school, you have to score so high on tests. You kids listening to me? Or you don't go on, okay? You go to work. You're kind of looking at me. Okay. Yeah, you have to score really high to go to work. And then if you want to go to college, you have to score really high. They only have so many places, and you don't get in, you go to work. That's how it works. Well, he happened to have made all C's, and that wasn't good enough. No great school, no great future. In the year 2000, his father planted for the next harvest season. And the rains came on time. And they have the rains at a certain time every year, and they did come. But when they came, there was a flood. And after the flood, came a very bad drought. Times got bad. Food got scarce. The family was cut down to one meal a day, and I think it was supper every day. And then it was just very little. He had to drop out of school because he did not have any money for the fees or the right uniform, but he had an idea. He had seen some things. He went to the little library that they had. Now, when I mean little, I mean just a few shelves. He'd seen a picture of a Kansas farm windmill. You know, this kind, you see them, they're pumping water out of the ground into the troughs, that sort of thing. And he began to think about generating electricity. And maybe even pumping water. Everybody carried water there. Oh, what an awful job. If you've ever had to carry water, and you know what I'm talking about. I drive by the spring down here every time I come to church. And I grew up on a farm, and every once in a while the water system would go down, it would freeze, all this kind of stuff. The cows would knock over the lines, you know, the whole bit. And we'd have to haul water. And what a job that is. Well, he began to think about this. So he did some research in that small little library. And then he went to the local junk yard. And he began to scavenge for parts. And everybody in his town thought he was crazy. The village idiot. Y'all have seen this. Well, he had a couple of guy friends, and they palled around together, and they decided they're going to help him. And he built a little tower about 18 feet high. He used half a bicycle with the back tire and pedal assembly and chain. And William began to develop a little magneto off of a bike light he had somehow gotten somewhere. You know, and of course, there was the big day of the big reveal, right? And the whole town turns out. You know, people were starving to death, and things were really bad. I mean, a lot of people in Malawi died in 2000 because of the drought. But they all thought, well, we got nothing else better to do. It's entertainment, right? Go out and laugh at your friends, you know. The whole turned out to see him fail, but he did it. He went on, he made electricity, powered a light bulb, which was really amazing in that day. He went on to make his own circuit breaker, light switches, plugged to charge his cell phone. And this is all untaught. He began to charge cell phones, power radios, and that was only the beginning of the story. The drought passed. The people heard what he was doing, and the TVs and the radio station came to do a story on him. And there's a special school in Africa for very special gifted children. And they invited him to come and study at that school. And he came then after that to America to study at one of the great universities. Today he speaks at conferences all over the world. William transformed his father's farm, his village, and even his country. Today you go there and you'll see all kinds of generation projects for power, solar and wind and things like that. And following what his father taught him at the height of the drought and the famine, his father simply said these words in the midst of terrible suffering, terrible hunger. And he said, "Trust God, son. He will provide." And God provides in so many ways. You know, God watches us. He sees us. Even this morning, all over the world, God sees his children. I'd like to think that, you know, so many places today, people are bowing down and they are praying, especially the young people and the old people in Ukraine. You know, they are calling out to the Lord as we are this morning. We are one people. Jesus told his disciples that their lives would be transformed. Their world would be changed. And he told them, be patient, be prayerful, be hopeful, wait and believe. And he told them, I'm going to die that you might live. And I imagine he told them those words that William's father told him. Trust God. God will provide. You know, the disciples had a whole different idea about how following him was going to go rather than what Jesus had. They thought Jesus was going to bring in the new golden age of God, that he was the Messiah that everyone was hoping for. They believed that they would rule with him. They would overthrow the Romans. They would have universal peace. That Jerusalem would be the great kingdom of all the world, the city of God. But Jesus told them something they didn't want to hear. They didn't want to believe. And he said, I am going to the cross to die, and 3 days later, I will rise again. And they couldn't believe it. They couldn't see it, and they couldn't accept it. Today, friends, it is Easter morning. We celebrate Jesus rising from the grave, conquering the power of sin and of death over our lives, the great gift of God. And because of his death and resurrection, that we may one day enter into God's great kingdom and proclaim forever that God makes all things new. You know, the disciples couldn't see the beginning on that first day. All they saw was the darkness, the distress, the despair, the disappointment, the heartbreak. In fact, the Passover was over, and they did not go to the tomb where they'd laid Jesus' body. It was only the women who went. And the women, Mary Magdalene, the other Mary, probably went very early in the morning before the rest of the crowds were stirring even. There was about 2 million people in the city of Jerusalem for Passover. They'd come in tents, and there were campfires, and the women passed by them in silence. And they walked in the darkness from the city up to the tomb. The weekend had been a strange one. On the day that Jesus hung on the cross, the clouds, it says, blackened the sky from noontime on. Darkness came over the land, and there was a powerful earthquake. And they say that the curtain of the temple was ripped from one end to the other so that you could see into the Holy of Holies. And the earth shook, and the rocks split, and there were strange happenings everywhere. And Matthew records that the Roman soldiers at the cross were terrified, and they said, surely he was the Son of God. Well, as it always happens, the ground stopped shaking. The skies cleared. Friday, Saturday, but on Sunday morning, the women are making their way to the tomb, and there is another earthquake, powerful but short. Later, Matthew recorded that an angel came. The angel came into that garden tomb area. He took hold of that stone, and he flung it back, and he sat on top of it. And he waited. And the guards, it says, were scared out of their minds, and they ran off. And the angel was waiting to deliver a message from God. And the women came. And the first thing he said was, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And the angel tells them, I know that you have come looking for Jesus who was crucified. He's not here, he is risen, just as he said. Come and see the place where he lay, and then go quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead, he is going ahead of you into Galilee. There you will see him. Friends, Jesus Christ is risen. He is risen. Amen.